Hey there, podcast listeners. Just a quick reminder before we start today's podcast. If you haven't seen the video of the show that we did at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, you're missing dance numbers, you're missing costumes and sets and a musical and visual jokes that honestly you cannot get by listening to the podcast. We're doing the downloads Louis C.K. style where you pay just $5. The web address, live.thisamericanlife.org, or if you prefer, live.thisamericanlife.org. Okay, here's the show. From WBEZ Chicago, it's This American Life. I'm Ira Glass. And there's this theater company here in Chicago, where our program comes from, that for years has been putting on a new show every week where they perform 30 plays in 60 minutes. They're called the Neo-Futurists. And a few months ago, a bunch of us were sitting around talking about them. One of us had just seen one of these shows. And we thought, that'd be fun. 30 stories in 60 minutes. Let's try that. Instead of our usual, each week we choose a theme, bring you 3 or 4 stories, blah, 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 public radio, very reflective. What kinds of stories would we end up with if we did 30 in 1 hour? Or even 20? What would it sound like? We honestly had no idea. And so, that's what we're going to do today. Today we're going to find out. And I have to say, time is wasting if we're going to fit everything in. How many will it be? How many will we squeeze in? There is but one way to find out. And that is to stick around. And let's begin with this one. Act 1. Don't I Know You? Throughout this hour, we're going to be bringing you 2-minute documentaries, fantastically short works of fiction, and all kinds of little stories that we ordinarily can't use on the radio show because they are just too short, even though they're really fun stories to listen to and perfect stories for the radio. Our first story is one like that. It's one of those stories, you know how people you know have their greatest hits stories of things that happened to them? We went on a massive search for stories like that from all over the country, and this is one of the stories like that we found. It happened to this actor named Tate Donovan. He told it to our producer, Starley Kine. He was out one night, going to a Broadway play with a friend, being treated in this way he never gets treated.
We're sitting around waiting for it to start, and I'm not I'm not a sort of recognizable actor. I'm an actor who works, but I never get recognized. So all of a sudden, the 10 minutes we're sitting there for it to start, 3 or 4 people come up to me and recognize me. I mean, they know exactly who I am, and they are quoting lines from a television show I was on, and like, hey, you were Joshua on Friends, and I've always admired stars who are really gracious, right. So you always think, that's what I want to be like. I want to be really friendly when I'm famous. So I wanted to be friendly and sweet and go out to the people. They don't have to come to me all the time.
So for like a little window of time, though, you were exactly the kind of celebrity that you wanted to always be. You were gracious and reserved. Yeah,
and warm, you know what I mean? I wasn't like one of these distant celebrities. I was like, hey, I was genuine. Like, they all left thinking, that guy's a really great guy, he's like so sweet. I was exactly how I wanted to be. I was doing it. I was doing great. And then the kid with the camera came along. This nervous kid, he must have been 16 years old. He's in a rented tuxedo, unbelievably shy and awkward, and he's got acne, and he's got a camera in his hand. And underneath the marquee is his date, who is literally like a prom dress, and she's got a corsage, and she's really, nervous and sort of clutching her hands, and he sort of comes up to me and he sort of mumbles, something like, something about a picture. And I'm like, I just feel for him. So I'm like, oh, absolutely. My gosh, sure. I have no problem. My God, you poor thing. And I go up to his girlfriend. I wrap my arms around her. And I'm like, hey, where are you from? Fantastic. Going to see the play. That's great. And the guy is sort of not taking the photograph very quickly. He's just sort of staring at me. And he's got his camera in his hands. And it's down by his chin, And she's very stiff and awkward. And I don't know what to do, so I just lean across and I kiss her on the cheek. And I'm like, all right, come on, take the picture, hurry up. And finally he sort of snaps it. And I'm like, okay, it was really wonderful to meet you. And he just stammered over to me and was like, could you take a picture of us?
Oh.
And the whole time, he just wanted me to take a picture of him and his girlfriend underneath the awning of the play. He didn't want a picture of me. He had no idea who I was. Oh, God. They were in shock. I don't think they'd ever come across a human being acting this way, you know? I mean, could you imagine you ask someone to take a picture and you just get in it yourself and kiss them and hey.
Hey Donovan with Starley Kine.
Act 2, No, of course I know you. One of the things that's been really interesting about putting this show together this week is going to some of our regular contributors and commissioning stories that are just 2 or 3 minutes long from people who normally write stories that are 10 times that length. This story is an example of that, from Scott Carrier in Salt Lake City.
Who was that woman? That woman I just saw while walking out of the restaurant. She was sitting at a table by the door, glasses, a hat, like Lois Lane. She looked at me like she knew me, and I said hello because I thought I recognized her, but I couldn't remember her name, so I just kept going out the door. Now I can't even remember how I know her. I know her, or used to know her. Somehow she was very important to me. She helped me out in a time of trouble. She used to roll her eyes. I'd say something dumb, and she'd roll her eyes and get me something I needed, even though she didn't have to. Maybe she works in the library, or the county recorder's office, or at the newspaper. I think I may have been in love with her. No, she's too young. I was never in love with her, not in that way. It's just that I wanted something, needed something, and she was able